Welcome to another video lesson from the Jelly Roll Club. Hey Quilty friends, Yvonne here. Tonight I'm going to show you how to make this wonderful little journal cover that you can give as a gift. You can make these in any size. You can make them as a Bible cover, a notebook cover, but these are great little gifts that you can whip up using your scraps. So if you are new to the channel, please go ahead and give it a subscribe. We've got a lot of other little projects happening this summer, but this is called the journal cover. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be going through what you need for this project. In this case, I'm going to be using just a standard composition notebook. You need something to measure with. A tape measure is super handy. I'm going to be using a little bit of leftover batting, but you can use fusible fleece. You need a piece that's at least 12 by 18. And so if you have fusible fleece or leftover batting, that's super. In addition to that, you're going to need a variety of scraps, or you can use fat quarters. So if you want to make this out of fat quarters, you can just use like one fat quarter for the outside, and then you're going to need one fat quarter for the lining. So if you don't want to piece yours, you can. The other materials that are necessary for this project are mid-weight interfacing. So this is mid-weight fusible interfacing. I buy it by the roll. Super handy. If you are going to be making a pieced cover like this, then you need a variety of scraps. And last but not least, make sure that you use some good all-purpose thread or cotton thread so that we can make our cover. All right, friends, so again, your materials are an 18-inch by 12-inch piece of fusible fleece or leftover quilt batting, not too thick. Lining pieces, we're going to need a fat quarter worth of lining pieces. And then we're also going to need binding. So you need 2 jelly roll strips for this binding, or at least 60 inches. And so, all right, friends, I'm going to show you how to make a pieced cover. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, friends, step 1, we're going to cut 9 strips of interfacing that are 2 1/4 of an inch wide so that we can make this nice cover. So we're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And they need to be at least 17 inches long. I'm going to make them a little bit longer than that. And then I'm going to sew my scraps onto here. So let me show you how to do this part. Okay, first we're going to take our interfacing and we're going to cut 9 strips that are at least 2 1/4. So we're just going to line it up nice and straight. And I'm just going to use this handy dandy ruler, and I'm going to cut these. So this is a 2 1/2 inch ruler. I need them to be 2 1/4, and so I'm going to take and just use that 1/4 inch line and line these up and quickly cut 9 strips of interfacing. And I'm going to use these to piece all of my little scraps, and so my scraps will be uniform in nature because I'm just going to use these for that. Hey, and while you're here, do me a favor and please give this video a thumbs up. This ensures that we can continue to provide free content for all of our viewers. Thank you so much. Okay. Once you have your 9 interfacing strips, you're going to grab a basket of scraps. In this case, I'm going to save my bigger scraps, which look like this is a 1/2 of a fat quarter, and I'm going to save that for my lining, for my inside flaps. And I've got another one, so I'm going to save these bigger pieces for the insides of my book, and then all of these little scraps I'm going to use to make my Scrappy outer cover. So let me go ahead and show you how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab any scrap. It doesn't matter which order they're in. And I'm going to lay my scrap pieces on top of my interfacing. So my interfacing has a bumpy side which has glue, and so I'm going to put that face up and I'm going to lay my scraps down, and I'm going to start sewing my scraps on here, making sure to overlap a little bit so that I can trim this to 2.5-inch strips. And so I'm just going to grab some pieces, any piece, it doesn't matter. I'm going to put them right sides together, and then I'm going to sew them together, and then once I'm done sewing the entire strip, then I'm going to trim it nice and straight. So let me go ahead and get started. And then every time, just like this, you add another strip, you're just going to finger press that. We're not going to press that yet, but you're going to make sure that it's nice and smooth. And then I'm going to add, this is a leftover jelly roll piece. I'm just going to add that like this. I'm going to stitch this down, some small, some big. And then when I know that I have completely covered my piece, then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to do the same for all of these strips. Once you have covered your strip, you can put a pressing cloth over your mat so that you don't get any glue on your little ironing surface. And we're going to take, and if you want to trim the excess seam allowances, you can. So we're just going to trim that selvage off of there. And I'm going to take, and I'm going to give this a good press. And so I'm just going to finger press it first, make it nice and smooth, and then I'm going to press it with a nice hot dry iron, just like this. Making sure that that interfacing is completely stuck to your strip. And so now, as you can see, my 2.5-inch strip will get cut from this piece. So I can just take now my strip, and I need to make sure that it's at least 12 inches. And I'm going to cut it 2.5 inches wide. So I'm just going to lay my ruler on here and try to make sure that it's nice and straight. Center my interfacing in this square, in this rectangle, I'm sorry. And then I'm just going to trim that off, and then I'm going to flip it around. And I've left my seams. If you want to trim those, you can, but it doesn't matter. They don't create any bulk. this panel from the front only. So I'm just using a little bit of heavy finish faultless starch. And I'm just gonna smooth that down. And this ensures that my pieces are extremely flat, and then those seams are perfectly crisp. And look at that. And so now that my seams are perfectly crisp, I'm going to continue adding to my piece. And then if you want to see what they look like on the back, this is what they look like. They've been interfaced and they've been pressed, and I'm going to continue adding strips. Okay, so once we have pieced our entire top, and I've opened up the seams, and I've made sure that this is nice and pressed. Now I'm going to measure my journal to make sure that it is the correct size. So I'm just gonna give it one last press, and I'm gonna trim this outer cover to the correct dimensions before I quilt the entire thing. Now, if you don't want to quilt this, this is thick enough that you could probably just top stitch it and it would be sturdy enough. That's what I did with my other one. But if you want to quilt it, you can go ahead and quilt it and then trim it to size. So let's go ahead and measure our journal. And so in this case, the journal itself, this little composition book, is almost 10 inches. It's like 9 3/4. So I'm going to want to add an inch. That means I need 11 inches for my cover itself to be 11 inches, and that allows for my binding that I'm going to put all the way around. So I want vertical to be 11 inches, and so I'm just going to come over here and make sure that I have at least 11. I have 11.5. So I'm going to trim this to size, and then I'm going to wrap this around, and I want to make sure, see, this is 15. I want to make sure that I have at least 16.5 because I'm going to give myself an 1.5 inches just to make sure that I can put this composition book. So I need 16.5 wide, the long way, by 11 inches tall. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to base this to my batting, and then I'm going to top stitch the entire thing. So I'm going to lay my batting before I trim anything. I'm going to lay my batting, and I'm going to sandwich this together, and I'm going to go ahead and sew all down these vertical lines using my walking foot so that I don't have any puckers, and then I'm going to trim this to size before I continue with my next step. Okay, once you have stitched all 3 layers together, so you quilted it, I quilted it not in the ditch but beside the ditch, and I just stitched it with a regular stitch. And now that I have that, now I can cut out my pieces so that they fit my cover. And so because this is a composition book, I'm going to be doing 11 inches this way and 16.5 this way. So let me cut out my back cover now that it's been assembled, and we're ready to go to the next step. Okay, now that I've trimmed that up, and I know that I have enough to have a 1/2 inch once I wrap this, so I'm just going to check it really quick, and when I pull this over, I should have a 1/2 inch, which is what I have on both sides, and that should fit nice and snug inside my cover. And so now I'm going to build the rest of these pieces. I'm going to need a centerpiece that's at least 5 inches wide by 11, and that's going to be my inner lining. And just so you guys can see, it's going right here. Oops, that happened when I was stitching. It's fine. I'm going to center that, so I'm going to find the middle of my backing, and I'm going to mark it really quick with a pencil. I don't want anything to bleed, so I'm just going to mark it with a pencil. And then I'm going to fold this piece in half, and I'm going to want to place that dead in the middle of my paper because that's going to cover. But now I need to put interfacing on this because I want to make sure, so I'm going to cut a piece of interfacing. I want to make sure that that's nice and firm inside, so I'm just going to lay that down. And I'm going to cut my interfacing exactly the same width. I'm just going to press it. Don't get too close to that edge. And then I'm just going to trim this up, and then I'm going to stay stitch. I'm not going to fold it under, but I'm just going to straight stitch all the way down these two sides. Okay, so now I have interfaced this middle piece, which is 5 inches across by 11 inches, and that is going to go in the middle of my sandwich. So I'm going to lay that down, and it's going to be folded in half. And I'm going to lay it so that that middle is right in the middle, and it's going to go just like this. And then I'm going to pin this together because now I'm going to make the 2 side pockets. And this little bit that got trapped in there when I was quilting,
I grabbed every piece of
that
interfacing that I had, and I cut some
Nobody's
scraps
ever gonna see
that
it.
would
And
fit,
so I'm going to
and I brought them
put this
over to
on
my
here,
sewing machine,
and I'm gonna go
and
make
I
the
placed
2,
them one on top of the other
side
at the
flaps to go
just to
on
make
either
sure
side
that
that
they
are
were
going to
lined
be
up.
part of the book cover.
You don't have
Okay,
to
so
sew with a
that's the
perfect
next
1/4
step.
inch seam. So as long as your seams are straight, that
Okay,
works
so
fine.
now I have these 2 pieces.
But you're adding all of your
and I'm
scraps
going to interface
with the
them, so
wrong
I've just
side
added some
facing the
interfacing to
bumpy
the back.
side of the
That's the
interfacing.
same size. And I'm going to interface
Take and open them up and
both of
finger
these
press each
pieces.
one, and then you're ready to continue.
Once I have the interfacing attached to both of these pieces, and be careful not to overheat your iron because it can really pucker your interfacing. So now that I have both of these pieces, I'm going to take and I'm going to fold, and both of these pieces are 7 inches by 11 inches. So they're 7 by 11, and I'm just going to take and I'm going to fold them over, and I'm going to fold them over again, and I'm going to top stitch this so that I can reinforce this edge. So again, I'm just going to fold this over like this all the way down. I'm going to press it with my iron, and then I'm going to fold it one more time, and that will reinforce my edge so that as I take my book and put it in and out, that it won't get damaged. And then I'm just going to top stitch all the way around, straight down this side. If you want to do decorative stitching, this is a great time to do it. And also, if you're going to add a label, this is the time to sew it in. So on my other one, I added a little label that said, handmade by Yvonne Davila Beagle with love. And so as I finish this one, I'm also going to add a label to mine. And so I'm going to sew this in to this flap before I put the entire book together. So as I get ready to put it together, I'm going to fuse this down, and I'm going to stitch it in place. I know that this is the inside flap on the left, so I'm going to leave about 1 inch on both sides, and I'm going to sew that to allow for the binding. And so I'm going to press that down, I'm going to stitch it, and I'll be right back. Okay, so once you've stitched one side, now you're going to stitch the opposite side because they're going to be mirror images. So now I'm going to do the same thing to this side as I did over here. I'm just going to take it and fold it in about 1/2 inch.
You're going to piece all of your strips in the same way, making sure to trim them up to 2.5 inches.
And these are the inside flaps. Like I said,
check them carefully. Once all of your strips are 2.5 inches,
deeper pockets, that's fine. I like 7 inches. It makes
and you've created 9 strip sets
easier. And so now I'm just going to top stitch it.
that look just like this.
mirror image this
now
one.
You can join all of those strip sets together,
top stitched just like this,
and you can use a regular 1/4 inch seam if you want to make it a little bit wider. You can, but you're going to join all the strips together,
it can mess up the tension, so just watch
and then those
so
seams will get pressed open,
and then we're ready for
so just
the
take your
final
finger
step, which is assembling the top.
and finger press them open, and then use a boning tool or something to help you spread them out.
Now this side has been sewn, and now I can
carefully press them open from the back.
So I have my outside flap that's been quilted. I'm
and then when
going
you're
to
done,
lay
you
this
press
down
them
here
from the
and
front.
cover all of my batting, and I'm going to clip it just like that. And this is now going to be my cover on this side, and we want those edges even. So I want, just so you can see from the other side, I want those edges to be nice and even, just like this. And then I'm going to lay this next one, I'm going to make it nice and even, and I'm going to clip that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an 1/8 of an inch all the way around. I can go ahead and just stitch from the edge, really close to the edge, all the way around to assemble my entire unit before I put my binding on here. All right, we're getting to the end, and now we have basted all 3 layers together. So we have the quilted top, we have the 2 inner flaps, and we can test out our journal to see if it slides in there before we put our binding all the way around, and so it fits just like that. If you want to fold it back, slide the back cover of your journal in there just like this. We're going to test it, and it fits perfect in there. So it fits just the way it's supposed to fit. You can center that. And so this is how it should fit. It has a tiny bit of slack in there, and I need that slack because that is where I'm going to put the binding. And so I'm going to do traditional binding just like you do on a quilt, and we're going to put binding all the way around by sewing it to the inside and then turning it to the outside. And in this case I hand stitched it, but you are welcome to machine stitch that. And so I've been working on some binding, and so if you've never made binding, you need a total of 60 inches to make sure that you have enough. And this is 2.5 inches wide by 60 inches. And I just joined the binding just like you do, like this, at a 90-degree angle. I stitched, and then I can just trim that off just like that by leaving at least 1/4 of an inch. And then I just flip this down and I press it just like you join traditional binding, and then I'm going to fold this in half and press it and attach it just like you do quilt binding. And so this is it, friends. This is how I'm going to create the binding, and I'm going to sew it all the way around on the inside. I'm going to remove this book. I'm just testing to make sure that I have at least 1/2 inch at the top and at the bottom. I do, and I wanted to make sure that I have 1/2 inch inside the flaps so that this will fit. And so I'm going to pull this out. And so this fits, and now I can put my binding on there. So once I fold all of my binding in half and I press it, I'm just going to pin the binding all the way around using my clips edge, and I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch all the way around. I'm going to leave a section, and then I'm going to join the ends, and then when I do, I'm just going to fold this over, and I'm going to fold it over again to the front, and I'm going to either machine stitch it, or as in the case of the other one, I just hand pieced it down, and that is, so I have stitched the binding all the way around. I've tucked it in right here at the end, and so now all I have to do is take my iron and press it and flip it to the front and just clip it all the way around like this, so that I can sew this to the front. So I'm just going to take, and then when I get to that corner, I'm going to make a little fold, like a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to fold it from the side, right, and make it smooth. That's why these clips are helpful. And then I'm just going to fold my finger in there and bring it in, and that creates that perfect little miter 45 degrees. So again, I'm going to take and push it, then I'm going to fold it down, and it makes a perfect mitered 45-degree corner. Put a clip there. You just want to make sure that when you sew that this meets right there, so that when you're sewing, you're going to bring that together, and then you're going to stitch into that corner to make sure that you have a nice crisp 45-degree angle. Continue doing the same thing all the way around. I'm going to stop down here. I'm going to put this clip in here. Same thing. I'm going to push down and bring it up, fold it so that I have a nice crisp 45-degree angle, and then I'm going to clip that corner to hold it in place, and I'm just going to go all the way around, and then I will be ready to sew this binding on, and my handy dandy little journal cover will be done. I can make this in any size. All you have to do is measure your book and add 1 inch to the height of the book, and then make sure that you can wrap it all the way around, and that you have 1 inch extra, because that allows you to put this binding. Like I said, I'm going to come here and I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to fold it over just like this, and that gives me that perfect 45-degree angle. And then as we get to the end, we're going to clip this last one, and now I am ready to either sew it by hand all the way around or sew it by machine. And that, friends, is how you finish this little journal cover, and I love how it turned out. Please let me know if you have any questions. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.